just like magic, it is being recorded by Allah's grace. So we are ready to go into this science of numerology. Now, first I'm going to bring up my little presentation here. And can everyone see Living Divine? Wait a minute. Bam, we need to be here. Can everyone see the screen? Making sure I'm not alone.
Bismillah, yes, Cheikh.
Alhamdulillah. Great. The subject of our talk tonight and over the next few weeks is living divine between the 1 and the 9. The title kind of says it all, because that's really what we want to be about. We want to be about living the divine life. And that takes place between the understanding and the coding of the symbolic signatures of 1 through 9. So I put together a brief outline of what we're going to be going over the next 8 weeks. Next week, we're going to be going into the science of numbers 1, 2, and 3. Week 3, we're going to be looking at numbers 4, 5, and 6. Week 4, we're going to be looking at numbers 7, 8, and 9. Week 5 is master numbers. Week 6 is going to be core numbers. Week 7 is going to be uncovering your sacred mathematics. And then, of course, number 8, or week 8, is going to be living the divinity of your numbers. All of these weeks, we're going to be covering insights into the numbers based on how we can apply this energy on a day-to-day basis and the ancient historical context from which it comes. So that's what we're going to be going over this week. First thing on my list is a disclaimer. Disclaimers are important because we want to make sure that we understand what exactly we're going over, what we're covering, who we're addressing, and what audience we're speaking to. Number 1, this is a Sufi gathering. Those of us who are in here are Sufi. Those of us who are in here have an understanding that there's a place where religion stops and Sufism, different understanding, next level understanding begins. This is the work of Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. He began, and of course, he taught a lot of Islam as it has been given to us. But at a certain point, a man came forth by the name of Cheikh Ibrahim, and he was the one, or is the one, we don't speak in past tense, that came forth and made it known that it was time to move into and to begin to talk about some of the other wisdom that was not being covered in the basic information. All of it has its point. But in my disclaimer, I want to make the point clear that we're not talking about religion. And I don't do religion. The reason why I'm making that clear and I'm making that disclaimer is because there's a lot of arguments that come forth as a relate to people who are Christian or believe that they're Islamic or following what has been put forth as Islam by others, much of which has been repurposed. And in that repurposing, they have taken out a lot of our ancient teachings and practices and customs that we have utilized for millennia. So that's what we're dealing with when we're talking about this particular science of numerology. So those who are looking at this or taking this into account based on what they have been told religiously from any branch of religion that one desires to practice. This ain't it. This is our science that we produce long before religion came into being. Understand, religion is man-made. The traditions and the customs and the heritage that we come from predates all religion. And our sciences cut through every religion that exists. So when we're talking about these sciences, we're not talking about a conflict between God and numerology. We're not talking about a conflict between worship in numbers and worship in the divine. We're saying and clearly stating for the record that this science of numerology, by any other name and every other name, is the science of the divine. It is Allah manifested through symbols, through numbers, through all of these beings of light that we will be going over the next 8 weeks. So I wanted to make that clear because
I am about to go to the library and
when
turn
it comes to
our
science and when it comes to what has happened to people who have talked about these sciences, we have to take this seriously. People have been killed, they've been burned at the stake. People have been confused over the years as a result of this. So tonight, we're gonna kind of set the record straight and deal with this as a science or the science that it is, and then go into what it all entails so that we can utilize it. And as we said before, take the spookism out of it. Any questions, comments, or concerns based on what was said so far? So, moving forward, does anybody know what this is? I know we got some scholars out there. And so I'm gonna put that scholarship right on point. Does anybody know what this particular writing here is on the screen? It's a Jeopardy question. Do, 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 do. Somebody know. No one knows, huh? Okay. How about now? This is Surah Kafirun. It's one of the 4 short kuls, or one of the kuls as they call it, meaning that one of the surahs that start with the word say. So this has always been one of my favorite surahs from the Quran. And this surah says a mouthful. In English, it says, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. O ye that reject faith, or in other translations, O ye who are disbelievers. I worship not that which ye worship, nor will ye worship that which I worship. And I will not worship that which ye have been, I will not worship that which you have worshiped, nor will you worship that which I worship. So to you your way, and to me mine. This is a different translation, but the meaning is the same. I'm not going to worship what you worship, you're not going to worship what I worship. This was given to Prophet Muhammad to say to those who disbelieved in what he was bringing forth. This is like a talisman, or it is a talisman, for those who are disbelievers and who do not believe in the ways that we brought forth many, many, many times over. So Muhammad was given these words to say because it was well understood that those who disbelieve and those who are not able to see things a certain type of way, Allah has put a shield or a seal over their heart and over their eyes. So it's certain things that they're not able to see. It doesn't make sense to go back and forth and argue over whether or not what you're saying is true or not. It doesn't matter because the seal has been placed. So you say to them to their way and to us our way, and you keep it moving. But what must be understood is we are people of faith, we are people of unity, and we always seek unity with true believers, regardless of which faith they're in. In that understanding, we also must be clear about the fact that there are those who have set into motion teachings, falsifications, misinterpretations of what we have put forth in our original way of life so that people can go astray and be misled. We got to be clear about that. So when we're speaking to those as far as those that are disbelievers who are not necessarily on the same page. We're also speaking to those who put into motion certain powers and programs and systems to keep us disconnected from one another. And at the same time, we are imparting the wisdom and the understanding and the knowledge that is necessary for us to move in this time. That is why it's important for this information to come forth now. And that's why it's coming forth now. And whenever there's opposition to it, I just point people to Surah Kafaroon and just kind of leave it there. So with that, we're moving forward. Now, definition. As far as numerology is concerned, numerology has been in existence by any other name from the very beginning. Allah himself manifested in many different forms, ways, even the forms of nature, the beings that are in nature, the stellar beings, all of this is a manifestation of Allah's light. We are the manifestation of Allah's light. So when we talk about what is the origin, where the numerology began, it has no beginning. Just like we have no beginning. Just like Allah has no beginning. It goes all the way back before time. And you can't calculate Allah in time because Allah exists outside of time. So using time as a measurement to determine and try and identify a beginning of something is not a good source or a tool that's going to lead you to an answer for that beginning. Numerology was known before the 20th century as arithmancy. And this is the belief that the divine, or there is a mystical relationship between a number and one or more coincidence. When we speak about the science of numbers, we're speaking from the perspective of there's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything that happens as a result of a mathematical process. Everything that happens for a reason. There is a meaning behind everything that takes place. That's where we come from with respect to numerology. Moving forward, numerology It is a number science that existed in all of our civilizations, including Egypt, Persia, Chaldea, Japanese, Chinese, Indian, Babylonian, here in America, and all of our religious systems. You will find a numerical system in place in all of these. Babylonian, speaking of the Babylonian system, numerology was the highest system in the Babylonian culture. And we know that that was a high society. So they understood the importance of numbers, and they understood how everything could be broken down. When you break it down to its lowest denominator, it could be broken down into a number or a numeric code, a system of numbers, which we're going to talk about later on. But everything that is around us, that is us, is summed up in numbers. The Bible says even the very hairs on your head are numbered. Everything has a number, and everything has a numeric representation in this physical world. Does anybody want to chime into that or have any questions or comments about that? Because that is very, very key to understand as we move forth in numerology.
Bismillah.
Bismillah.
Alhamdulillah. This may be too early to ask this question, but mine is like when you cause what made me think of the question is when you said everybody or there's no coincidences. So like lately in my life, like I don't read too much into it, but I know it's something deeper to it. Like what be happening when you always look at the clock and all the numbers is all the same? Like what do that mean? I know that each like 111 might have his thing, 444, 333, but like when you just look and like you try to look and you like, yo, it's locked again. If you want to shed a little bit of light on that, like sometimes while we always looking at the clock and it's always the same numbers.
Great, great question. And we get that quite a bit. I'll answer that question this way. When I first started out in numerology, one of the first things that prompted me, actually it was after I got into numerology, one of the things that prompted me was I kept constantly seeing what you're seeing, these sequence numbers over and over again, 111, 222, 333, throughout the day. Now, most of the time you're going to see these numbers are on a clock, you know, like 333, 111, 222, or even 1212. You're going to see them 1111, which is a big one. You're going to see these on the clock. The one that I kept seeing the most, and I hadn't even thought about it, I just went to a person that was well-versed in spiritual concepts, and I told them that I'm seeing these sequence numbers. And she told me to get a pad and just write down the time that I see these numbers and which ones are coming up more and more and more. And so as I began to journal about it, the number that kept coming up over and over was 1111. That's the one that I kept getting the most. I was getting the other ones, but the most was 1111. So what I did was I went to try and understand what these sequence of numbers mean. And to answer your question, yes, we're going to deal with what they call angel numbers later on as we get into this numerology. But the briefest answer is each of these sequence of numbers represents something different. So depending on which number you're seeing the most, whether it's 111 or 444, they each mean something different. And 1111, which is the one that a lot of people are seeing quite a bit of today, that number, as we spoke about before, it represents mastery. and it represents going on the path or taking the path in the initiation to higher light. That's what 1111 represents. It's 4 ones, so you're moving forth sequentially in a step-by-step process towards realization of what we'll call in Sufism, Allah realization. So it's a step-by-step process. When you see that 1111, that's a prompt letting you know what time it is for you and what you need to be engaged in. Simply get on your mastery. It means that the masters are around you. It's a prompt to let you know what time it is. If you're seeing 444s, that's a more of a foundational number, which means it's time to start establishing your base or to fortify your base so that you can have something concrete that the metaphysical and the spiritual can be grounded in. 4 is a grounding number. So that's representing a grounding energy. So each of these, what they call angel numbers, have its meaning and it has its purpose in your life. You just have to do the work of being ready to move based on these numeric energies that come through. Because once you get the prompt, there's an action that has to come behind that prompt that you get as a result of seeing that number. You don't want to say, oh, I'm just seeing a number and I acknowledge it and I move forward. It's letting you know that it's time for some activity based on the fact that you're seeing that number. So when we get into the angel numbers with the master numbers, we're going to go into some of that as well. Did I answer the question?
Absolutely. Jetta Jeff Sheikh by.
Jeff.
I look forward to hearing more about it.
We're going to get there. We're going to get into all of it. Any other questions or comments? No, everybody must be dealing with their numbers then. Okay. I'm not mad. Now, we're going to begin at the beginning that we have been given in our sacred text. This is important because when we look at our ancient texts, scrolling some stuff around here online, we look at our ancient texts, the information is given to us, but much of it is given to us in a way that it requires some form of decoding. We have been told over and over that when we're talking about spiritual books, Bible, Quran, Bhagavad Gita, etc., it's not just a novel. You have to read it, and as you continue to read it, you read it on different levels. If you read it one way today, you come back 2 days later, a month later, a year later, and you read the same passage, you're getting something different because you're in a different place. You're in another place of understanding. You've seen some things that you can put into practice as a result of that. So each of these scriptures are layered with information. And a person, no matter where you are or what your frame of mind is, you can get something by reading this. And then as you continue to grow, you can get something else. Now, it's not necessarily a person has to be advanced to get advanced information. And another person that's not quote unquote advanced may not get information where they are, because a person who's not necessarily versed or dealing a lot with higher sciences, they can do more with what they get from the level that they're at than a person that's, way out and quote unquote deep in metaphysical science can get done, because they're able to do more with it where they are, and they're able to get better results where they are, and they're able to fully apply and engage themselves so that those results can come forward. So we're not really dealing with levels from that perspective. But what we are saying is that there's another meaning behind the basic meaning that we've been given. Of course, we're talking about numerology. So when we're talking about numerology, we have to go back to the source, and the source is always Allah. So when we start with the Bible, we start with Genesis, the first chapter and the first through the third verse. And very simply, it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. The key that we want to look at is that third verse. And God said, let there be, and you can stop right there. But we'll finish. Let there be light, and there was light. In the beginning, when the creation process took place, it took place as a result of Allah saying, let there be. And just by saying be, it comes into existence. When we look at John, the first chapter, first verse, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now later it goes on to talk about how this one called Jesus becomes the flesh or the embodiment of that Word. So in the beginning, a word was uttered. And from that word, all creation comes into being. When we go to the Holy Quran, the chapter Yasin, which is the 36th chapter of the Quran, it talks about Allah in his creation mode. And it says his command is only when he intends the thing that he says to it be, and it is. Another translation of that is kun fayakun. Now I heard there was a radio station that was utilizing that same title. I don't know if you have heard of that, but I'm gonna guess that you have. Kun fayakun is a powerful, powerful phrase, mantra. And with that, all creation takes place. In the beginning, there is a word that goes forth that produces everything that is in creation. So let's take a step back. Before the word is uttered, there is someone or some being that is the utterer of that word. And before the word is uttered, there is an image, there is a vision, there is a picture that is already formed. And then with the word be, it comes into creation in physical form. This is the creative process that each of us must engage in, because it is the creative process that was put forth by the Creator herself. So in the beginning, we start with an image of what it is that we are desirous of creating, being, or experiencing. Then from that point, we put forth our word. What is in word? Breath, inspiration, air, fire, water, All of that is in the breath that comes forth and then creates earth in physical form. All of that is in the word be, and it is. All of that is in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God. The word was in God. The word actually is God. But this is the creative process that takes place every time we are about to create something. Does anyone have any comments or thoughts about that?
Assalamu alaikum, Cheikh.
Wa alaikum salam.
So just to make sure that, and perhaps this is a thought in some other mind. So basically, it sounds like what you're saying is that the act of creation, or like the book Mental Netta described as self creation, is an ongoing process. So that same process is built in to the mechanics of the universe. So every time we're about to say or create something, the same thing happens mathematically. Did I get that correctly?
Of course, you got that correctly, Sheikh Farad.
Alhamdulillah.
You're right on it. You are absolutely right on it. That's a great point. Every time, that's how creation takes place. And to make it even clearer, if it can't be any clearer, every thought that registers in our mind that we utter, we are creating. We are giving life and focus to what we think and what we say. So we have to be careful of what we think and what we say. Sheikh Sufi Baz says, a master is a master of his words, thoughts, and actions. We're talking about mastery. And so we have to take control of what we're thinking so that we can control what we're saying, so that we can be in better control of what we're creating, which actually controls what we are experiencing in our everyday life. That's the creative process. From the creator in the beginning as the very word herself. All of creation is the manifestation of the divine. All what we look at is as negative creation is the misappropriation and the misapplication of the creative process. All of it. But within it, we can see the divine in all of it, because it all comes forth from the divine, no matter what state that it appears in our environment. Does that make sense, or am I the only one?
I mean, Sheikh.
Well said, Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah, somebody says she knows all about you.
Islam and mathematics. Amen.
Now, where did that come from? Just out of curiosity.
But the she all knows all about you, Sheikh?
Oh yeah, I know you know.
Oh, alhamdulillah. That was me to post. Okay, alhamdulillah.
Does anybody else know where that comes from?
Problem 13.
Alhamdulillah. Now, the reason why that's important is because that's presented to us as a problem. All of those things that are in the quote unquote problem book that was given by the master, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was instrumental in bringing forth a lot of information that we have, and as far as bridging the gap to even more information, he presented to us this problem book because we are supposed to grow scientifically to a place where we can solve a lot of the problems that we're dealing with. And part of the Sufi path is, or the part of the Sufi path is for us to grow up into mastery. Believe me, all of this ties into numerology. The process is for us to grow up into mastery so that we can understand what's taking place within us and what's taking place around us, and then begin to exercise a measure of control so that we can have a righteous environment as opposed to the chaos that exists in the dunya. That's the purpose of growing up into mastery. That's the purpose of solving the problems that exist within us and around us. That's the process of growing up into mastery so that we can be examples of light manifested in a world of darkness that has produced the chaos around us. So that's what we're talking about with respect to this process of creation, how creation takes place, and how we bring things into existence. So with that being clear, we're gonna go to this slide. And this is all that really needs to be on this slide. Again, we're talking about numerology. And I said the next week we're gonna go through numbers 1, 2, and 3. But we can't go through any of the numbers until we deal with the cipher. We have to deal with the 0. I want to hear what some of you know about 0. Does anybody have any information about this symbol that's on the screen right now? Because that's what it is, it's a symbol.
Represents the origin point.
Origin point, awesome. Wonderful answer. Anybody else?
I would say,
It's
Cheikh,
like-
that,
it's like-
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Astaghfirullah, Sheikh. Astaghfirullah. I was going to say it's the cipher number, Sheikh. All praises. Bismillah.
The cipher? Alhamdulillah.
Astaghfirullah. The cipher number. Astaghfirullah.
The cipher number, alhamdulillah. Wonderful answer. Sheikh Farad?
I was going to say that that in most of the European systems, for some time, they didn't recognize the 0 as a number because to them, it was unquantifiable. But then when the Pythagoras and some of the other philosophers started going into Egypt, they found out that something shifts in the mind when you accept 0 as a number, because it really, though it represents nothing, but it really represents everything at the same time. So it's like, as much as to the way they were thinking, it's the smallest number, or not even a number at all, because it's not quote unquote measuring anything. But from the ancient standpoint, that's what makes it a number, is that it's measuring everything from the root. So, you know, the science of Amen, all of that comes out of 0. So,
Ameen. Well, I don't have to say anything else. Y'all already got it. Doors of the church are open. Anybody else want to chime in on this 0?
I give one more status for it. It represents an origin and a return to origin, such as you go to where you come from.
An origin and a return to origin. That's profound. Brother, you must be studying the Sheikh Sufi.
No, absolutely.
He's one
Alhamdulillah.
of the first disciples to come in the Darrah in Philly maybe 10 years ago.
Alhamdulillah.
One of the hidden masters. He knows, I don't want to say, but it's great to see him in class. All praises due to Allah. I sent him the invitation personally.
Alhamdulillah, Sheikh. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Bismillah.
Well, that says it all. Interestingly enough, when you look it up, you know, Wikipedia, Google, those types of things, they'll say it has no value. Zero, nothingness. And I always found that amusing because if I have a 1 and there's nothing behind it, it's 1. But if I have a 1 and I put 6 zeros behind it, I'm looking at a mill. Seems like to me that 0 makes a difference. But anyway, moving forward, when we're talking about this cipher, this 0, it represents the nothingness from which everything emerges. It represents the void or the portal through which everything that is not in the light comes forth into the light. Out of darkness. The 0, the cipher, represents the divine feminine, because all that exists in the material created world emerges from the matter. The matter is mother. And I know if Sister Zima Lafi is on here, she would certainly be saying amen. But this is what the void represents. It represents, or the 0 represents the womb of creation, the womb of the universe. That's what it represents. And as we said, all physical existence, everything that you can see with your eye comes forth out of the divine feminine creation. The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said that Allah created himself out of the triple darkness of space, which represents darkness, which represents the divine feminine. The Bible says, I will give you the treasures of darkness. And I never really hear preachers really go into what that means. They kind of stay away from that passage of scripture. I will give you the treasures of darkness. It's telling you that there is a treasure in the darkness, in the void. That's where everything takes place, in the darkness. Whatever thought of light that emerges from your mind, it emerged from the darkness of your thinking before it is brought into light. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. First thing that was created was light out of the darkness. So this is the divine process of creation. And this symbol that is represented as a 0 represents that womb or that creation out of which everything emerges. In other systems, it's just a dot, particularly in the Hindu system. And certainly when we talk about our Murid order, that dot that's under the Ba represents that. That is representative of that primal point from which everything emerges and in which everything is contained. So the zero is the absolute. It is the nothingness. It is the void from which everything emerges, and everything is a manifestation of this void and of this zero. Another way to look at that is everything that we see above the earth, whether it's a building, whether it's a tree, whether it's our physical bodies, everything that we see was once in the earth. Everything was once in the earth and then fashioned a certain type of way so that we see it now. But it once existed in darkness, in nothingness. Then it was an idea, an image. Then that image came into being through divine utterance in this physical existence. That is the science behind the womb of this symbol represented by the zero or the cipher. That's what numerology is speaking about when it talks about the zero as the first before the 1 through 9. Technically, it's correct. It's not technically a number. It is the portal through which all the numbers emerge. And then it takes its place behind those other symbols to give them added value. Man, there's a lot in that. But the point is that that's what this symbol represents. Does anyone have any other comments or questions about that cipher of zero?
Bismillah, brother Nur Muhammad. I want to say I really appreciate the lecture so far. It's real deep. I'm a fan of esotericism and mysticism and all that. And that's real so important for us to go into these numbers because they definitely do define reality. We create a number so we can measure space and time. But
Yes.
the number zero also sometimes they call it the chaos. I believe even the word gas come from chaos or chaos come from gas. But basically it says it was a void, or sometimes they call it chaos. So this is also known as primordial matter.
Yes.
In science known as alchemy, they say in order to change base metals into gold or perfect the personality, you must first find the first matter, which is symbolized by the zero or the akasha. It's supposed to be the essence of all the elements, the fire, the water, the earth, and the air that manifests as spirit, soul, emotional body, and physical body. So they say this number zero actually precedes and succeeds every change in state. In other words, it's a state between the states. It's a state beyond measurable time, or it represents eternity.
Islam, you went all the way in, brother. All of that is absolutely correct. Yes, that primordial energy. Brother, you've certainly been doing studying and you are on it. That's correct. Everything he just said, yeah.
Can I add on to his cipher? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying in the Theology of Time in the lecture called The Science of Zero, ironically, he was talking about what Imam Nur Muhammad was saying about the chaos. The messenger was saying that the first law is actually motion. And the second law is order. Order doesn't precede motion. He said that, but so the first thing that had to happen is the atom sparked and just started moving. And then later order was established when things were measured out where everything would go. The intelligence of Allah, as he was building up, he was establishing order. So that's completely mathematically correct. in terms of what brother just said about chaos, according to what Elijah said in that lecture.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. Thank you for that, Sheikh Farad. Yeah, that has been a intense study talking about that science of zero coming out of that theology of time, man. That's incredible, incredible. And one of the things we want to say is we're trying to, as we always do, take the spookism out of it, because as we often say that none of the stuff that we talk about is really that complex. It just seems to be complex as a result of the lies that have been told to us. And now that we have to go back and kind of cut out the misinformation that's been given to us, it makes it seem as if it's something that's so complex, but it's really very simple. It's really very simple once you understand the basic concepts and the basic laws and the basic pillars that are governing all of this. Is really not complex. So it may sound, mystical and talking about Akashic records and primal points and all that type of stuff, but it really boils down to everything emerged from a single point. Everything emerged and came into being from a womb, if you will, that brought all that we physically see into being. That's the creation process that Allah has ordered. And that's what we're living in right now. And if we're going to be successful, we have to mirror that same creation process. Anyone else have any thoughts about that? That zero science.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum.
Oh, wa alaikum salam, Sheikh.
You just taught me a lesson that I had no idea about. And the sisters are not going to like to hear the Sheikh say this, but if the man represents one and he has a zero next to him, he has one wife, he becomes 10 times more powerful. If he has 2 zeros next to him, he becomes 100 times more powerful. And I'm gonna close my mouth on that because I don't want the sisters in the Darrah to throw rocks at the Sheikh, but you just gave me some science, brother. Because the zero is definitely the woman. The man standing by himself is only worth 1. And when he has a wife, he's 10 times more powerful. And I'm gonna close my mouth on that before the sisters leave the chat. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Sheikh. That is indeed some wisdom. Woo! Yeah. Yeah, zeros make a difference. Zeros make a difference and add value. Alhamdulillah.
Astaghfirullah. Bismillah, Sheikh Idris Bar.
Yes, sir.
Because Sheikh Wali, I was just gonna ask, does that mean Honorable Elijah Muhammad was writing his act, but they just didn't understand him. That's why the scholars didn't throw no rocks or talk about him or try to get that $10,000 out of his vest pocket, his brother's vest pocket, when he was teaching theology at the time. And I want to ask y'all, when Sheikh Farad started talking about that atom, the spark, and we, being some of us know how he taught it in theology at the time, doesn't in Arabic atom means atom? I'm not sure, I'm asking.
Yeah, atum is atom, yes.
Atum, yeah.
So that means, once again, they knew what Honorable Elijah Muhammad was talking about, but they try to diss him because his speech, or the way he talked, he was talking about the sparks and the atoms and the science of zero and the science of 6. And okay, give thanks and praise, Sheikh.
Yes, sir.
That's a great point. That's a great point. One thing that I want to add to that is, oh, please go ahead.
Okay. No, I can wait.
The only thing that I was going to add to that was, a lot of times we listen to what the European or the powers that be and what their comments are about some of our leaders and some of those who have emerged saying something different than what they were teaching us. One thing that we want to understand is a lot of them had that knowledge. It's not that I'm talking about from the higher levels of their system. It's not that they were trying to discredit him because of his speech. That's true also. But the other thing is, they knew exactly what he was teaching because they had those teachings. Remember, they raided Egypt, they raided India, they raided the teachings that was here in ancient America. They raided Timbuktu, Liberia, Alexandria. It's not like they weren't in possession of a lot of this information. So when they see somebody come on scene and start speaking about it, they have to discredit that person because it has a negative effect on their rule, which is what we're here to be. We're not here to support and uphold this particular world. We're here to be disruptors. And I think that a lot of time that's something that gets lost. When we look at the prophet Esau, or Jesus from the Bible, he wasn't trying to get favor with the government of his time. They hated him. They tried to kill him. It's a story, but it's telling you something. Prophet Muhammad, let's begin to talk about how many battles he had to have with the wisdom that he came forth with that was different from what was being taught from those who were in positions of power. And this was the case of all of the great ones, the divine ones that come forth, bringing information in this type of environment. They're disruptors. They're disrupting the current of wickedness that's taking place in a society, and they're keeping control of that by going after those who are disrupting their rule. That's how they're able to keep control. So we don't even know how many great ones have just come up missing before their message even really got out. We're just now talking about the ones that we know about that was able to make a much larger imprint on society and history as a result of what they left. But that's what we're talking about earlier when we were talking about how serious we have to take this information and how serious we have to take our ancient customs and rights, because people were killed as a result of that information. So we're talking about what Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad put forth during his day, and we're talking about how the government and those figures reacted to him. It's no different than Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba. Look at how government treated him. Look at how the people treated him and what he brought forth, because he was disrupting something. Even though he wasn't raising up a revolutionary army to go against the French, he was still revolutionary because what he contained in his head and in his vessel was an absolute threat that they felt they could not ignore and they could not allow to continue to freely express itself among the population that they thought they controlled. So he was a disruptor, even though he wasn't doing it in the same type of way. The point is, we have to be aware of that. And we have to be aware of the way that government treats those of us who come forth with certain information. I say this over and over again because it's extremely important. There's a reason why we had a mystery school. There's a reason why we had certain people set aside outside of society that come in and out of society, but the information was kept by a certain group of people because it could not get out to everybody based on the fact that the society at large and those who were running that society would try and kill him. That's why you had a mystery school. That's why you had information that was kept apart from the everyday person, because it's not that the everyday person couldn't grasp it, but once they got to a certain point, they were given the information to take them to the next level. And that's the way the mystery system worked. This was not something that was looked at and favored upon by those who were in charge, because you can't control people if everybody has the same knowledge. You can't keep them under control. So we're living in a society that is built up on state-funded, federal-funded, approved, certified religion. What does that tell you? I'm gonna move on before I start getting into trouble. But at any rate, this is what we're talking about with respect to the cipher, the zero, and how creation takes place. Any more comments on that?
One last quick one, Cheikh, that I was thinking about the power symbol, like when you're cutting on a device, the power symbol is the zero with what looks like a 1 in the middle of it. Pretty sure there's some ancient context to that symbol.
Yes, there is. I've also seen that. Well, I've seen a symbol that has that 0, and then in the middle, just like it has a 1, that 1 is in the form of a man.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
Coming forth. So yeah, you're right on it with that. Right on it. And
Bismillah, could I add on?
By all means.
I just wanted to add that the 0 is the Fool card in the tarot system.
Oh.
From the mystery schools as well. And the Fool is the initiate. And so kind of all the definitions you've been giving are the way that I would describe that card in tarot as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I love it. Thank you for that. Yes, the Fool. How can we forget about the Fool? Which is, again, our sciences put into a system where we have a pictorial representation on a card that gives us wisdom. And as we shuffle and move these cards about or what have you, the card that emerges is the card that's for that particular person that's sitting in front of you, or for yourself if you're looking at these symbols of wisdom for yourself. The Fool card, which is a 0, represents the beginning of the journey. A lot of people look at the Fool card as if this is just somebody who's ignorant or just aloof. No, it represents that this is somebody that's just starting out, just emerging from the 0 and beginning the journey, just coming into creation, just beginning to start something. That's what it represents. That's a brilliant point, sister. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Can I add something on?
By all means.
Dealing with the two, what they call the 2 states of mind. One, they consider to be the conscious thinking. That's our normal consciousness associated with number 1, but the number 0 associated with the subconscious mind, also known as the psychic mind. A mystic is defined in Webster as someone who believes that direct knowledge of God, spiritual truth, and an ultimate reality can be experienced internally as intuition or insight. Those two terms, intuition and insight, which intuition is known as the still small voice, insight, the eye of the soul, which is basically seeing a plane that's not considered physical, but yet it's all around us. The number 0 is associated with a consciousness that in Arabic is called hikmah. It's a state of not thinking in which you can receive intuitions from the planes above. So the 1 is dealing with conscious thinking, and it's associated with a physical reality, but the state of not thinking, or they say, and Rumi says it in the Bible, silence is golden. That's why he talks so much, and then he gets to a point and says, you know what, it's better not to talk, because in that state is how you receive. So that state represents a return to what we call the primordial waters, the primeval waters, the first matter, the Akashic. That state, also known as peace, is how you can receive intuition and insight.
Wow. Wonderful point indeed. Wonderful point indeed. Sheikh Sufi teaches us and talks to us so often about purifying your nafs, getting control of your nafs. And what you were just speaking to in terms of that mind is really getting out of the ego. Once you're in the ego of thinking that you know and not allowing yourself to be receptive, that's where you get into trouble. So you have to this is why we as Sufis try and purify our nafs, so that we can get to a point of purification where we can receive a direct, pure line of information, wisdom, intuition, insight, and imagination from that place of electromagnetism, consciousness, the womb, the divine self of Allah in that form. We can't do that if the mind has not been cleared. We got to clear away all the rubbish, all the garbage and the false ego, so that we can receive information. Now, when we say that, a lot of our scientific brothers and sisters will say, well, brother, that's not science. That's not science, because, you know, we have to be able to quantify that type of thing. And if you can't quantify it, then it's not science. And often I laugh at that, because it's really hilarious. When you really begin to look at what you can actually prove, it really gets to be a very, very small world. You can't even prove that you have a mind. Prove it. Prove that you have a mind. The world of the provable and the scientific has also been repurposed, because when we say science, what you just described was actually science, but that's not the way we think of science. We think of science as being able to tangibly prove something in a false reality to determine whether or not something is real. And they call that science. And the scientists themselves to tell you that they really know very little about anything that's happening here on Earth. Very, very little. So this is actually what we're talking about now, what we're talking about in terms of these ancient sciences and wisdom and understanding that we put forth on the planet. This is actually science that we have to go back and reclaim, bring forward in our minds first, and then disseminate to one another. And as we get together and build with one another, we build that science up in one another, and that becomes the confirmation. The confirmation is not in a book. Confirmation existed before books. So books can't contain our scientific understanding, the totality of it. We may find some of it in a book, but we are beyond that, because whenever we go to that process that you just spoke about, of allowing ourselves to be clear and receiving in receptive mode the pure line of information and insight, we get more information and more knowledge to uncover a lot of what we have not yet discovered in this particular false reality, we'll call it that. That only can take place when we're Islam at peace, when we're quiet, and when we're not interfering with that process with negative thoughts, words, and actions. This is why understanding the science of numerology as well as our ancient sciences is essential. When we hear about these sciences, the only thing that they'll say is, oh, it's a divination system, and we don't believe in divination systems, we believe in Allah. Well, divination systems have been used by the prophets of Allah. Divination systems have been used by spiritual beings, divine men and women all over the earth. These divination systems are in the Bible. The prophet Yusuf was a dream interpreter. He interpreted dreams. That's what he did. He also saw into the future. That's what he did. And we can go on and on and on. But the point is, now is the time for us to repurpose our understanding of all of these terms, whether they be science, whether they be our ancient ways, one being numerology, whether it be the term Islam, what that means, whether it be the word peace, what that means and how we utilize it, redefining what has been negatively repurposed is what our mission is and what our work is as we grow up into mastery, having emerged from the void or from this zero. Anyone else have any comments on that? This is how we live the bond between this one and this none. And nobody can help us do that. Well, our Cheikh can help us do that, of course. But if we're looking to society to show us how to do that, they can only show us what they're gifted in. And what they're gifted in has not worked very well for us. So I behoove each of you to get back forward to what we have always put forth of divinity and science and wisdom, just like Cheikh Ahmadou Bamba did with Qasides. Qasides, a rhythmic representation and recording of the divine, is what he put forth. That's an actual science in the true sense of the word. And he articulated it well in what he put forth. And with all of that, much of the so-called Muslim world decides to ignore it. Any other questions or comments? Last slide before we glide up out of here. Remember, we just beginning. I'm just kind of laying the base.
I just want to say give thanks, and I'm looking forward to it. I want to run on, give thanks, give thanks, give thanks.
Alhamdulillah, that means a lot coming from you, Sheikh Zali.
Question.
I mean.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Alhamdulillah.
I was wondering, because it says between 1 and 9, you was talking about 11:11. Will you go into the science of 11 at any point in your lectures?
Absolutely. We're going to do that when we deal with the master numbers. Hold that thought.
All right, praise Allah.
The master numbers, that's going to be week 5.
All right, definitely going to be there for that one.
Yeah, we're going to go into that with the master numbers. And yes, the 111s, the 222s, 1111s, all of that, we're going to be going into the science of those angel numbers. So definitely, definitely stay tuned. And, you know, as each week go forward, you know, there may be some surprises. So you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. We may end up going into some of it here and there as we go along the journey. But yeah, we're going to go into detail with that information as we move forward. Now, lastly, does anybody want to read this last slide for me?
Bismillah, Ari Sheikh.
Alhamdulillah.
It seems that the Proto-Ismaili group of the Ikhwan as-Safa, the Brethren of Purity in Basra, who composed their encyclopedic treatises in the 10th century CE, were the first to use Neoplatonic and Pythagorean ideas extensively. According to them, Pythagoras was a sage from Haran, and they believed that the prophet sent to the Sabaeans in Haran was Enoch. Oh, that the prophet sent to the Sabaeans in Haran was Enoch. That is Hermes Trismegistus, who they held as particularly well versed in number mysticism. For the Brethren of Purity, numerology was a way to understand the principle of unity that underlies everything. This is from The Mystery of Numbers from Anne-Marie Schimmel.
Bismillah. Thanks so much, Sheikh Farad, for that.
I mean,
now, why are we going over this? That sounds like a whole lot of academia. So what we do as Sufis is simplify the seemingly complex. It's not complex. They just use a lot of words and a lot of terms that they create and come up with to try and confuse what's actually being said here. So let's break it down. It's talking about a brotherhood of purity. That's a Sufi order. Anytime you see that, you already know Sufi. So you can just translate all that to Sufi in the area of Basra. Moving down, Neoplatonic and Pythagorean. These are names that were put on the sciences that were taught, most of which comes out of the teachings of Enoch or Idris. So many times before, we talked about how this being called Idris or Enoch is the same being as Hermes Trismegistus. Same being. So when we see the word Sabaeans, the Sabaeans come forth out of what is pre-Arabian history. Before the Arabs, there were the Sabaeans and the Umayyad. These are our ancient civilizations that later on became the quote unquote culture that the Arabs copied and mispurposed. In other words, they took their format from these ancient beings, the Umayyad and the Sabaeans, and then they put forth Islam, their version of Islam, and hence we have the condition that we're in today. So Enoch, Hermes Trismegistus, Idris, same being, different names. This is where a lot of the information on numerology, even mysticism, astrology, etc., that has its origin place in much of what this being Idris brought forth at that time under numerous different names. That's what's being made clear here. And numerology was understood as a principle of unity that underlies everything. All of the other systems were crystallized in the principle of the science of numbers. Like we said earlier, everything could be broken down to a number. So this was the system that they used to contain and preserve spiritual universal concepts by the symbols in numbers. Now, this piece comes forth from a book, The Mystery of Numbers. And next week, we're going to go even further into this because, man, once we get to, it's going to blow your mind what comes forth next week from this paragraph, the paragraph that follows what Sheikh Farad just read. It is going to blow your mind, but it's talking about that concept of unity and how that begins to take shape as we move forward through the other numbers. So to sum it up, this science of numerology, the science of numbers, the ancient wisdom of symbolic representation of light emerging from the darkness. That's what it represents. Sheikh Sufi Ba was just talking about this past week on Sunday night, and he was talking about how we are light. We are the light, and we emerge from the ultimate light. These numeric symbols are numeric representations of the light codes that are deposited in each and every one of us. As we begin to understand these symbols and the light that these symbols contain, we can unlock those numeric keys within ourselves, and we'll be able to unlock doors that was once locked in front of us. That's how we utilize numerology. And that's how we grow up into our mastery, by understanding that we are light and we have emerged as light from the ultimate light. And these signatures or symbols of light are utilized to work in concert with the light that is within us. We are all of these numbers and all the symbolic representation of these numbers. We bring forth the light of all of these numbers as we'll begin to go into over the next few weeks. But I want to kind of lay the base of us understanding that this light that we're talking about in the science of numbers, we find that in everything. When we read the Qasides, the verses are numbered. When we read the Quran, the surahs are numbered. The verses or the ayats are numbered. When we read the Bible, they're numbered in terms of chapter and verse. The books of the Bible are numbered. 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 books in the New Testament. They're all numbered. The earth, the measurements of the earth are numbered. Everything has a number, and that number emits a light, vibration, and frequency that we are supposed to be operating on. And once we key into that and align with that, we produce the best frequency around us, and we emit a light around our physical vessel that they call an aura. That's light emanating around us. The more light that we're able to take in, the more light that we're able to tap into, the more light that we're able to admit or emit in our environment. And people see it, whether they realize what they're looking at or not, they see that light. This is what we all represent. And each of us has the capacity to bring that light forward. And we start based on the numerical code that we came into this existence with. And as we uncover that code and the wisdom that comes forth with those numerical codes, we began to emit more and more and more light in our merging with the ultimate light of Allah. Does anyone have any closing remarks? That's the end of my soapbox.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I was going to say, man, you cover so much in this. It's just mind blowing. And when you were in the last part, it just made me think of the lessons in the same problem. Number 13, Masfar Muhammad redundantly says something 3 times. First, he says Islam is mathematics. Then he says mathematics is Islam, as if he needed to repeat that to show you he had already said Islam is mathematics. Why does he need to say mathematics is Islam too? Because he's showing you the importance of that. And then he calls it a mathematical theology.
Yes.
So this is like over redundantly stating that this way of life, this nature, which Allah, the Quran says is Allah's nature, what we're today calling religion, is math. So that takes math to a whole different level than just being numbers and symbols like the European tried to get us to think. It's just amazing. This is probably why we don't do very well in math the way they teach it, because that, that spiritual context is not there. And Master Muhammad said that he wanted us to know calculus and to have high civilization. He mentioned calculus as one of the things that we needed to know. So, in terms of living it, and the problem book kind of illustrates that kind of mentality. When you read those problems, this is definitely somebody that's thinking on a high, supreme mathematical level. So it's just your lecture tonight just embodied all of that, brother. Thank you, Cheikh.
Alhamdulillah. Yes. All praise is due to Allah. I'm thankful that some light was shared on the subject. And as we continue to move forward, I guarantee that there will be much more light brought forth on this subject, because it is needed, and each of you have a role to play in bringing forth this light and manifesting this light, so that all of us can see based on the information that is deposited within us. And as I said before, once we get together, that's just light on top of light in the presence of the light of Sheikh Sufi Ba. Alhamdulillah. Anybody else have any comments or questions or ideas?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. I am so elated, blissful, happy to be in the presence of such high beings. And this class is so deep, we might not even be able to put it on YouTube. No, I'm joking. But I can see just from the people in this class, we got 16, 17 people in the class. 3 people signed on with the name Sheikh, but I'm telling you, in the next 3 years, the men and the women, everybody in this class has the possibility to become a Sheikh from what I'm seeing. Everybody in this class is high masters, the men and the women. all have that light of divinity that when it comes to full power, we're gonna have to give them the name Cheikh. That's all I can say. May everyone in this class continue to grow. Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Well, you heard it from the master himself. Light beings everywhere up in this class. And I've heard Sheikh Sufi say that just being called to this order means that you're carrying a certain type of light, or else you wouldn't be able to or want to be bothered with the information that's being brought forth in this Darrah. So absolutely, I'm thankful for the opportunity to present to these beings of light from the light that is emitting light here in the northern corridor of this universe, Sheikh Sufi Ba. So this is indeed an honor to be among all of you and to share a little bit of light on an infinite topic. Are there any other thoughts? If not, then we're going to begin to close out. But before we do, I want to remind everyone that we will be going over this Living Divine between the 1 and the 9 for the next 7 weeks now after this week. And on next week, we're going to start getting knee deep into the science of the 1, the 2, and the 3. As Sheikh Farad was just mentioning about things being done in threes, we're going to talk about that when we get to the number 3. And there is a treasure, let me say this, in every single light symbolic emanation from 1 through 9. Each of them have a treasure in them. I don't look at any one number being better than the others. Each of them have their unique gifts and manifestations of light for us to partake in. So starting on next week, we're going to start getting into each of these numbers and how to utilize them to our best advantage and exercise our mastery on the earth as Allah intended. Any other closing thoughts?
Like I would just say in response to our beloved Sheikh's comment that is under his leadership and with these practices, there's no way that what he said couldn't be the case. We're in the greatest position, and I don't believe it's probably another Sheikh on the earth that could have the expectancy of a whole school of masters. That is something that possibly only Sheikh Sufi Ba could pull off. And alhamdulillah, to be honored enough to be in such circle. Alhamdulillah.
Well said indeed. Well said indeed. It takes a masterful, a very, very special impartation of light to bring this forward and to present a place that contains light and to bring forth light strong enough to illuminate a place where darkness exists, even illuminating the darkness that's within us. And so we thank Allah so much for that example, for that presence, and for us being able to participate and be witnesses in this time with this being. That being said, we're going to close out. And Bismillah. Someone had a comment?
I just want to say shukran for you taking the time to do this and prepare something for us. This is one of the most stimulating conversations I've had in a long time.
Alhamdulillah. Honored. Thank you much for being here and for sharing all that you shared and making the conversation as impactful as it was and the message as impactful as it was. And moving forward, look forward to seeing y'all every week, because not only are we going to be bringing forth information, and not only am I going to be sharing light, but each of you are going to be sharing light as well. So get ready. We're going to tag team this thing until we are the actual manifestation of what we're talking about and discussing. By all means. Any other final comments, closing thoughts? If not, then certainly if Sheikh Sufi's on the line, I would certainly like him to give us a closing dua.
Bismillah. Well, that's amazing because my favorite dua always comes from Sister Aisha Siddiqua. So if she is on the line, I would pass the mic to her. Is she here? Is she still in class?
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We hear you well.
Yes, we
Wa
do.
alaikum salam.
First
Wa
off,
alaikum salam.
I just want to say we just went quadruple platinum on here. We got all the sheikhs. I always say Sheikh Sufi has the best sheikhs, and I mean that from my heart. I thank y'all for all the wisdom that you share with us, because you don't have to. You could keep it to yourself and leave us wandering out here in this world. So if all hearts and minds are clear, I'll start a prayer. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. O Creator and Creatress, we come to you. We ask that you bless everyone that's on this line. We ask that you will allow us to take in every word that was spoken and place it in our hearts, and allow us to use it in our intentions for the service of Allah. We ask you for more understanding, more understanding, more overstanding of the teachings of Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba and Sheikh Ibrahim. We thank you for them. We thank you because Sheikh Sufi was given the knowledge to bring him forth to us over here in these United States of America. We just thank you for that. We thank you because now we have someone to look up to that's a shade of our color, which means so much to us because now we can identify truth with ourselves. Yes. We just ask that you will bless us in every word, act, and deed that we take throughout this week. We ask that you will assemble us back on Friday for Friday night's Darrah, and let us have receptive hearts for that which will be brought forth on Friday. We ask that you will bless us in our future endeavors to have the alchemy of the butterfly retreat. We ask that even those who cannot make it will still participate and open their hearts to which will be brought forth at that retreat. We already claim a victorious event. We already claim overcoming any challenges that we may bring to that mountaintop. We already claim that we will reign in spirit, we will reign in love, and we will reign in truth. We just thank you. We thank you, and we can never thank you enough, Takbir. We just give you praise, honor, and glory. We thank you for our ancestors. We thank you for our descendants. We thank you for our teachers. We thank you for our leaders. We thank you for all those who bring positivity in our life. We ask that you give us the force and forgive us of our sins. Give us the force to shake those demonic spirits that try to embody us. We ask that you allow us to rely on your word. You have many words that come forth. That's why in this circle we are safe and we are comfortable with sharing words, even from the Bible. We share from the Quran, we can share from the Torah, because all truth is universal. And we thank you for Sheikh Sufi allowing us to bring forth all truths, and he stamps them, and he's a knower of all truths. We ask that you bless him and continue to uplift him and give him the strength. We ask that you will just protect us and cover us from all the wiles of the dunya that we have to face face on a daily basis. We ask that you will allow us to remember to rely on our zikr, rely on the qasas, rely on those ayats in the Quran, those psalms in the Bible that carry us through. We ask all of these things in all of the sheikhs' names, in all of our leaders' names, and all of our prophets' names. Ameen, Ashe, and Aho.
Ameen.
Mean, Derry, Jeff.
Takbir.
Mean.
Ameen. Ameen. Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar.
Wow, that was powerful. Alhamdulillah.
Yes,
Allahu
yes.
Akbar. Thank you,
Allahu
Sister
Akbar.
Yeshe. You make me want to call the ushers now. Alhamdulillah.
Yes, sir.
Ameen, Ameen. So grateful to Allah.
Grateful to you. Thanks so much, everyone, for being present. Thank you for your input, and look forward to seeing you on Friday and Sunday, and again next Wednesday by Allah's grace. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Walaikum salam.
Rahmatullah.
Family,
Rahmatullah.
make sure that you all
Walaikum assalam. Walaikum salam.